Hello there and welcome to the Summon, the African Summon, where we connect you to Africa and African culture. In today's edition, we'll be continuing our story, The Good Foot by Cameroon Nsanda Eba. Be sure to invite your friends, neighbors, and loved ones and join us for this great read. While you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and share. Welcome. Chapter 3, The Good Foot. The school anthem was the first in Bantam, and among the surrounding tribes, it opened with 30 people, including Mbamu, in spite of his early feelings about school and the white man. He liked going to school because it gave him an opportunity to play with his age mates, who were rather few because the majority of the people were over 10 years old. Being a new school, it had naturally only one class, which was class 1. At first, the pupils were at a complete loss, not knowing what it was all about. But after 1 month in school, the whole world of letters and figures started to dawn on them. After 1 term of 13 weeks, it could be noticed that Mbamu was a very clever pupil. He could recognize all the letters of the alphabet and write a few. He could also count up to 20. There was one very clumsy student who could not pronounce the letter R. Instead, he said L. To him, a rat was a lat, a ruler was a lula. The other boys always laughed whenever he was asked to picture read from the teacher's chart. But during manual labor, this boy, who was the oldest in the class, was a bully, would laugh at the smaller boys, especially Mbamu. Yes, in class you get all the sums, but you can't even work. You will sweat here, he would tease Mbamu. Mbamu would simply say, "You Lula." Then he will laugh and run away. "Come here, you. If you run, I will catch you." Everybody will laugh again much louder. School was such fun, even work was pleasant, and above all the marching and singing, the teacher taught many nursery rhymes, although very inappropriate for Africa, most of all for Bantam. But the melodies were good, and that was what mattered. You could always hear the school a good distance away singing, "Hot cross buns, hot cross buns, 1 a penny, 2 a penny, hot cross buns." Nobody knew the exact words, not even the teacher, but the melody was good, and that was what mattered. One fine day, Elate, Mbamu's father, went to Manjong, one of the neighboring villages. There was a big celebration there, death anniversary or something. On the way, a bush rat crossed the road just in front of him, from right to left. This was a sign of good luck. What was he to meet at Manjong? What good thing was he expecting? Had he been going to hunt or trap? He would have known for sure that he will come back with some game. He was now getting near the village and could hear a hum of voices and beating of drums. Well, 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 we shall see. He could not get over the rat episode. As he was approaching the outskirts of the village, the music was now very loud. Instinctively, he quickened his pace, and as he did so, he tripped over a stone. It was not painful. He simply knocked his right toe slightly on the stone. This too was a sign of good luck. He was sure to meet something pleasant at the celebration. Elate was warmly greeted by his age mates in the party. He was a bit late, for a good number of people had already gathered there, drinking and chatting. He pulled out his drinking horn from his bag and filled it with nimbo. He drank the nimbo non-stop, then stretched out his empty horn, and it was again filled. When he had drained 3 handfuls, only then did he look around and join in the conversation. Latecomers always did this to compensate for what they must have missed. The drums sounded good. It was Elate's favorite dance, the shoulder dance. He and his friend went to the circle, and as the drums warmed up, they caught the rhythm with their shoulders. From the dexterous display of the dancers, you would think they had no shoulder blades, or if they had, that they were made of rubber. The women danced exactly as the men. Now and again, a couple would dance to the center, face to face, the men dancing forward and the women backwards. When they reach the center, both dancers will throw the dance to the drummers, who would immediately stop the drums all at once. There would be a loud cheering. Then a vocalist or two would intone in a thread-like manner a very complicated piece. All would join in unison. The drums will pick up the signal tune. First one, then two, then all the drums, and the dancers will commence again. Everybody seemed to enjoy himself. After 1 hour's vigorous dancing, there was a break. It was during this break that Elate saw one of his friends who had for a long time been in the plantations. He wore a striped shirt with long sleeves and a lady's hair tie around his neck. "Is this an Mbamu?" Elate asked, with joyful surprise, not believing his eyes. "An Mbamu of Manjo." "Sure, it is me. I returned the day after last market day," an Mbamu replied. "And you did not care to send word of your arrival." "I wanted to surprise you, old friend. I should have been at your house this evening, but this celebration disturbed my plans." "Man, you look so changed. You have been away for so long. You certainly waited for your plantains to get ripe." "I shall be going back after 1 moon. I have been here for just a few days, but I don't think I can live in the village again. I am like a fish out of water." "Are you joking? Having escaped from the plantation, you want to go back to bondage? You are not serious." "Of course I am. I could not be more serious. One of the reasons I said I would visit you was to ask you to come with me. You're already a family man, and you must think of your children and their future. What do you earn in the village? Nothing. In the plantation, you can earn 15 shillings a month. 15 shillings! Also, we have a new set of white men who are not as cruel as the old set." "Well, what do you say?" Something clicked inside Elate's mind. What was his future in the village? He might one day become the village head, which was a very important position indeed. But Enambong said that one earned 15 shillings a month in the plantation. His total savings to date, which was buried in a rusty tin at the corner of his bed, amounted to exactly 12 shillings and 6 pence. 15 shillings a month. God, this is too much for one man. "I shall think about it," Elate finally replied. "Okay, I shall meet you tomorrow and we shall discuss things in detail." 15 shillings a month. Elate did not hear what his friend said. He was still thinking about the plantation when his friend pulled his hand gently. "Let us join the rest," he said. "The dancers are already started." No doubt. As I was coming to the celebration, a rat passed in front of me, a good rat from right to left. Soon after, I knocked my good foot. Yes, I knew something big was going to happen to me, Elate told himself. It was the day after the celebration, and Enambong had kept his word and was now discussing the details of their dispatch to the plantation. "You see, Elate, after serving for 2.5 years, I was made headman. I am no longer Chapia." "What's that?" said Elate. "Oh, Chapia? That is to cut grass. That's how we say it in the plantation." Chapia. Chapia. Elate was memorizing the word and repeating it slowly to himself. "Yes, and I came to arrange for my second wife," continued Enambong. "You say you are leaving next month, but what of Mbamu's schooling?" Elate asked. "Do you think we have no schools down there?" Enambong teased. "We have better schools, but when he leaves, remember to take his certificate." He meant his certificate. That night, Elate told his wife all that Enambong had told him, and that in 1 month's time they would be going down south to the plantations. Good Lord, she exclaimed. Are you mad? You just want to kill us. The plantations? Have you not heard of the dreadful stories of how the white man flogs laborers? You will go alone. Listen, mother of Mbamu, he said in a pleading voice. We have 3 children now, and we shall eventually have more. Mbamu's elder brother is big and cannot go to school, but from Mbamu onwards, our children will go to school. Where shall we have money to pay for their school fees, to buy clothes? I have already spent 5 shillings for Mbamu's schooling. The only answer is to work in the plantations. We shall save a lot of money, and you shall wear better clothes, and beads, and even hair tie, and shoes perhaps. When she heard of the later advantages, she softened. I am only crying because of you. If you think that you will be happy in the plantation, I have nothing against it. Only, never say I did not warn you. The next morning, Mbamu was very excited to hear the news of moving to the south. He told all his friends at school, and they looked on him with some admiration as one who would soon be going south to see all the marvelous things they had been hearing of. Mbamu's elder brother, who was then 13, would remain with his uncle. Mbamu had an only sister who was then 1 year old. Although she had started walking, she had a few teeth. She was still fed, and there were fears that the long journey might affect her. But since she would be carried on her mother's back in a special bag with straps, these fears were unnecessary. All the debts had to be collected and all the food harvested and sold. A lot of meat had to be dried because it was understood that times were hard in the south. It was in the course of all this bustle that an accident happened which could have affected the journey and the rest of the story. Mbamu's parents and his elder brother had gone to harvest crops from the farm, and they had left Mbamu to care for his younger sister. His mother had carefully instructed him on what to do during their absence. Mbamu, there is food in the pot. When the baby wakes up, give her some food and some water. Make sure that she eats well. She did not eat much in the morning. Yes, Mama, replied Mbamu. I know that when we are gone, you will play all the while with your friends, but don't go far from the house. If on our return we find that the baby has been crying, we shall deal with you. I shall look after her well, Mama. Mbamu was not a troublesome child, so his mother knew that there was really nothing to be afraid of. An hour or so after, Mbamu heard a loud scream from the house. He immediately left his friends and ran in to see what had happened. And behold, there was the child crying on the floor. She had rolled off her low bed and fallen down. Mbamu picked her up and dried her tears and sang softly to her. Baby, oh, no cry, oh. Baby, oh, no cry, oh. Mami ele, ya, yo. Mami ele, ya, yo. Mbamu fed her as he was told to. But he noticed that she twitched uncomfortably when he rocked her on his lap. What Mbamu did not know was that the baby had burned herself slightly when she fell. A fire was usually lit in the bedroom to keep it warm at night, and when the baby fell, she unfortunately landed on one of the glowing embers. But she had moved away instinctively, so the burn was not severe. When Mbamu's parents returned, he did not tell them about the fall, and the burn went unnoticed for a few days. Then his mother noticed that the baby had a red sore, the size of a shilling, on her left buttock. The mother screamed and called for her husband. Look, Father Mbamu, what I have found. How on earth did the baby get such a wound? She was really terrified. You careless woman, Mbamu's father was furious. What have you done to the child? And on the eve of our departure, let's see. Ah, that's a burn. You have burned her. But I never took her near the fire. I have never brought the child near the fire. It must be your pipe then. I have told you that this chronic pipe smoking of yours will land you in trouble. I know exactly what happened. You were smoking your pipe with the child in your arms, and you must have dozed off. Then a spark from the pipe landed on the child. Oh, you careless woman. He was really furious. But a spark from the pipe will not land on her buttock, she pleaded. Don't argue with me, wicked woman. How else do you think the child got the burn, if not from your pipe? Like all good women, she knew when to stop arguing, and this was the time. Even though she was half convinced the burn was not due to her carelessness. But how was she to carry the child in a carrying bag with such a large burn on her buttock? It would rub against the bag and made the whole buttock sore and painful. Mbamu had guessed the secret of the burn, but he was not telling. It would mean that he had been careless over the child and he might be flogged. Also, he was not even quite sure whether the burn had actually resulted from the fall. No, let Mama bear all the blame. After a few days of worrying, Mbamu's mother came up with a brilliant idea. She got the bag in which the child would be carried and cut a hole about 2 inches square, just where she estimated the burn would be. This way, the burn would not rub against the bag. Also, she did not cut out the square completely. She only cut along 3 sides, thereby leaving a flap which could help to keep the flies and other insects away if they traveled. This idea pleased everybody. The tension that had built up because of the accident soon disappeared, and the packing continued as joyfully as before. All these activities made the month fly as though it had wings, and before they knew it, they were on the eve of their departure. Relatives of the Elates came around to bid them farewell. Where is the alligator pepper? Elate asked his wife. Distribute it around. Everybody had at least 2 grains of alligator pepper, the sweet type. While they were chewing the alligator pepper, they also took turns to speak, calling on the gods to shower blessing on Elate and his family. He and his wife and children stood in the center of the room, and the rest of the people formed a circle around them. Let nobody in the south have an evil eye on you, said one old man. Let everybody smile on you and your family. If anybody thinks evil of you, let it return back on himself. Let your journey be peaceful, said another. If you kick a stone on the way, let the stone break and not your foot. Let the thorns on the way turn into mounds of earthworms. All the people in turn said things in this vein. And when they were through, the eldest person raised his hand, said, "Ee!" And all responded at the same time, spraying the chewed alligator pepper with a generous amount of saliva on the departing family. They were now blessed for the journey. The journey proved to be less exciting than Mbamu had earlier thought. He trekked the first 30 miles or so, and then his legs could bear him no longer. So he had to be carried by his father. He was not carried like his younger sister in a bag. He was too big for that. But he sat astride on his father's shoulders so that his feet dangled on his father's chest. This increased the load to be carried. Not that the loads were many. There was an earthen pot, which was thrown away on the second day because the carrier stumbled and fell and broke it. There were 2 iron pots, some basins, and an old basket which leaked, a few enamel dishes, and some rusty spoons with 1 fork whose prongs were so large that nobody ever ate with it. There was a plank box of moderate size, containing a few pieces of clothing. These and a few other odds and ends were tied together into 2 loads. And Elate was lucky to have people traveling in the same direction to the neighboring village for the help to carry the load. The journey was made lively and thus less irksome by Nnambo, who kept up a running commentary of life in the plantation. By dusk, the party reached the village where they would spend the night. They were warmly welcomed by the villagers. They were given water to bathe with and food to eat. By mealtime, Mbamu could no longer walk about. His feet were swollen, and any step brought sharp pains. He did not cry. He was a brave boy, and everybody praised his courage. By morning, his feet were not as bad as the previous night, but it was clear that any more trekking from Mbamu was out. It usually took a week to trek from Tem to the south if you were lucky. And if you had enough money, you might meet a lorry at Mbonge, where the motor road ended. On the 3rd day, Elate and his team were near Mbonge. When they were about 2 miles away, they met a group of people just coming from Mbonge. They sympathized greatly with Elate when they saw him sweating under the weight of his son and the rest so heavy load. If you had come earlier, you would have met a lorry at Mbonge, and perhaps if you hurry, you might still meet it there, they said. Elate and the rest moved on faster, and although they were tired, they did the 2 miles in 20 minutes. Luck was with them, for right in front of them stood a big Mami wagon. "What's that?" said Elate's wife. "It is a lorry. If there's space in it, we shall enter it." Nnambo replied, "You see, the driver sits in front and all other people sit at the back." He spent a considerable time explaining the mysteries of a lorry to his keen audience. If the engine has a cold, the motorboy winds it up. Then it coughs and then starts, and fire comes out. At night, its eyes shine, so the driver can see the road clearly. Mbamu made a close examination of the lorry. True enough, it had 2 fat eyes and something like a mouth, but its feet were nothing like he had ever seen before, and he wondered how such a huge thing could move on feet like that. Meanwhile, his father and Nnambo went up to the driver to bid the fare. The driver explained that the engine had developed some trouble when they were about to start half an hour ago, but everything would soon be okay. Elate secretly thanked his stars for the engine's troubles. Voom, 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 pee-eep. "All passengers enter," the driver announced. He warmed up the engine and hooted several times. These noises scared Mbamu, and he ran wild, shouting for his mother. He had never seen the like. Everybody clambered in and sat on benches inside the lorry. It had a plywood roof and tarpaulin covering on the sides, but because it was dry season, the tarpaulin was rolled up so that one could view the outside undisturbed. The driver hooted again, and then the lorry was on the move. At first, slowly. The motorboy dexterously removed the wedge used to prevent the lorry from slipping and replaced it in the lorry. Then he waited for the lorry to run a few yards. He then ran after it, caught one of the frames of the tailboard with one hand, and swung himself on the tailboard, catching the lower frame with his left foot like a monkey. He remained in this position for some time before finally entering the lorry in one swoop. All these maneuvers registered in Mbamu's mind. He looked at the motorboy with a lot of admiration and awe, and thought within himself that when he grew up, he would be a motorboy. But other things also caught his attention. True enough, when the lorry started to move, there was a rough jerk that threw him off his seat onto the floor. He learned his lesson, and from there on, he held tightly to the side of the lorry. But the lorry itself was not moving. Only the trees were moving, and very fast too. When he looked at the floor of the lorry, he noticed it was still. Mama, he called. The motor is not moving. Only the trees outside are moving. She did not answer, for she herself was watching the trees and people pass and dwindle away in the distance. It was terribly fascinating, and one might add, weird. These white men are wizards. She kept thinking to herself, fancy a big house like that moving swiftly. It was a ride of 60 miles or so to Beaver. Before they had gone 25 miles, Mbamu began to nod. The lull and the rocking of the lorry as it sped over the laterite surface played on Mbamu's tired nerves, and he was soon asleep, with his head resting on his mother's lap. We leave him thus and turn our attention elsewhere. And that's where we end for today, viewers. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if you like this content, like our videos, and share. Until next time, I am Manondo Akono saying thank you for responding to this summon.